Welcome to OCELA 2009, and another series of interviews that I've been able to do with several of our people who have had a part in our Ukrainian Baptist history. Today it's Saturday, August the 8th, and with me is Nora Osborne. And I know I've always looked at her as RIA Kutcher, and I'm sorry your last name, you have to tell me, it's RIA?
Yeah, I do go by RIA.
You got Kutcher in there, and your name on top of it, is it still Kutcher or no?
Kutcher-Gyra.
Gyra. How do you spell that?
G-Y-R-A.
G-Y-R-A. You see, and that's something we assume. We always look at people, but we never cross all the I's and T's. So, and what I'll ask you to do as well is, obviously, with the noise all around us in this building, is to speak as loud as possible too, so that the microphone can catch that and get that. But it's been a privilege for me to be able to interview Brother Evangelical just for the last 2.5 hours, and God has gifted him with a memory of reciting poems, and I didn't want to stop him. I would love for his children and grandchildren someday to hear how he was able to just recite from memory almost every poem that he wrote in this book. He can bring it off the top of his head, and that is a gift that God has given Brother Evangelical, and I know he's given each of us different gifts. And today I'm sitting with two very close ladies. They're family members. They're sister-in-laws, and you correct me where I'm wrong. And they're probably the best-looking ladies that always come up to OCELA, driving up in a brand-new car, or always a spotless car, staying at the nicest hotel or motel in Peterborough. And that's the way, as God's children, I know that we need to treat ourselves to as we come up to OCELA. And I'm just going to ask them some questions, and as God has led on my heart, they've been a big part, they're parents of our history of Ukrainian Baptist, and our family as well. And especially their husbands. And their husbands are very dear and near, I know, to them, and they're no longer with us. But that's a story in itself of how many times we think life is guaranteed for us. And God sometimes pulls the rug out from underneath our feet. And how do we actually move on from that point? So as we go through this part of this session, I pray that God would bless our time together so that you would be able to learn from these dear sisters as well. Some of the triumphs and tragedies and struggles they've gone through, but also what their parents have done and what OCELA means to them and their roots in the Ukrainian church. So welcome officially, Raya and Nora. I've always dreamed to do a radio program or a TV program and maybe the next Larry King. But you know what? We have so many people that have an incredible history, and I'm trying to capture it on video. I shared a little bit of why you're here today, and I'm just trying to, before the evening service, it's 10 after 5, supper time is coming, and the evening service at 7 o'clock, so I'll try to make this as painless and fun as possible. When you look around, we're sitting in the building of the Way of Truth. And this building was built for a lot of books that were transported from Toronto by Brother Lubzik. And a few years ago, these books were sent to Ukraine. And every person I've interviewed, I've shared that God's put on my heart that we have a history. But it said if our history was here in archives, that it was sent to Ukraine. But as good Ukrainians and good Canadians, if our kids or grandkids ever want to go to a place to research our people, where would they go? So I asked everyone, where would you turn to? And for those that have sat here, I kind of pointed out, well, correct me if I'm wrong, as I asked Brother Ivashki and others. In 1967, Brother Grigory Tymciw wrote a big history of Ukrainian Baptist, and it's a massive 500-page book. All the churches that were started, pictures, pastors, Toronto Church, they're all in here. The problem is I started writing the Ukrainian alphabet there, then I started translating the first 2 or 3 lines, and I gave up. Because it would take me forever to read this book, because God has not gifted me in Ukrainian. So if your children, grandchildren ever wanted to read something in English and on Ukrainian Baptist, if I were to ask you, what would you give them? What books would you give them?
We don't have any.
Okay. And for 25 years being on the All-Ukrainian Youth Committee, I fought with our leadership to say, not one more penny for another Ukrainian book. Please, give me something in English so that if I'm a leader, I want to be able to distribute and circulate to people to say, this is our history.
Yeah.
There is a history of Canadian Ukrainian Baptists written by Peter Kinkov, all in Ukrainian in 1972. And in here you'll find all of our churches and stories. My dream is to get this translated into English someday. But it's 36 years out of date, right, 1972.
Yeah.
So that is our gold book for Canadians as Ukrainian Baptists.
And where did you find that?
In my father's library.
Really?
Yeah, I pulled all these out of my father's library. But though who published all these. So they're all available, and there's excess inventory. I think it's all been shipped to Ukraine. But every home in our churches would have copies of these books unless they've been thrown out. So if you attended the Toronto church, whenever it was released, almost everyone bought the book in that Toronto church. So you might have them, you might not, but my goal is to never lose these, but get them converted to English, translated. More important, make that available on the internet, where it's too costly to get this printed and translated. And to actually share my dream and vision with people, and get people possibly to even catch on to the dream that if our history is precious, right, stuff being translated, there's things that we can do to keep it alive. And that's something that hopefully these videotapes from their distributor or DVDs will help people to know their history. I'm starting here. In this book, in English, to the English-speaking reader, there was an introduction. And I came across it, and in there is S. Kutcher and A. Osborne. And they wrote the introduction to the English-speaking reader of the whole history of it. When I saw that together, I wanted the two of you together, because there's two names here together as well. This was 1973. Here's the Toronto book. So it all comes back to this here in the Toronto book. And the first thing, and that's just more of an introduction so that people know, why are we talking to you? Where did all this come from? So when I flip through here, I see your husband, Nora Alex. I see your mother in there. I see your father. There's so many. The first question I have is when I ask you, what are your recollections of the Toronto church when you sit here today? And now we're going back almost 60 years.
That's right.
What are some memories or thoughts that you have right now of the Toronto church?
Right now, Toronto Church, it's too bad that we don't have more people there, because we would attend it too. And it's very sad that what has happened. We started it, and we tried to build it up. It
Yes.
was our first enthusiasm to serve Ukrainian people. And organized the church street services. That's where we found out about boycotts that were here. They were in the church, Greek Orthodox Church, and they came across our services and then find out that we were in Toronto,
I see
trying to organize the Ukrainian community.
I see Mihailo Boyko is member number 20, and Sofia Boyko. Those are the people.
Those are the members that, those are the, I'm talking about Joseph Boyko,
Joseph.
Hanya Boyko.
Helen, I know. Yes.
He is from our village.
Yes. And I believe they joined as members.
They joined.
They're members 97 and 98 in 1954.
Yeah.
Now, you know you are member number 16.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
You're member number 16 here.
Yeah.
And for the history of the Toronto Church, when we had the 50th anniversary, I called you up to the front because I invited all the people, Brother Prokopyak and Brother Lutzik and Osypowich, for the people to see. 50 years later, there's actually, whether you attend or not, there are people here that are still alive that were there when the church started. And if you're going to ask people about the history and everything, I always had a dream to do this, ask you some thoughts, positive, I don't care what they are, but you know what? If we don't capture that, then we miss out on a lot of that history.
Right.
Now, there's three of you. Your father was 14, your mother is 15. How old were you in 1950, 60 years ago? Were you a teenager or past a teenager?
No, I was a teenager.
And in order to be a member, you had to be a baptized
Yes,
Christian.
I was baptized in Germany.
In Germany.
Yeah, and Mr. Reverend Nischik baptized me, and he also married us. That's why. And Walter, I suppose, Kutcher was baptized and by Nischik.
By Brother Nischik.
Yeah, by Brother Nischik.
There's Brother Stephen Nischik. Now, you know what I found out about him? He was instrumental in bringing Leo Korovnik and Walter Kutcher to, right?
Yeah.
Where did I read that? In all the things I'm pulling out, all these books.
That's why he married us.
Okay? You see, these are things, when I read that, Stephen Nischik, he's got a little booklet that you can read in about 20 minutes. His whole life story, how God used him all over the world. And people, these are pioneers. And he's been instrumental. I remember him with a little mustache over the upper lip. But there's an incredible book that needs to be kept alive. And I'm hoping in everything that I'm doing to bring all this together under one roof so that you can actually not have to do all the work that I've been doing for 25 years, which is here are all the books about our Ukrainian baptisms indexed by family names and where the family names are found in all of our magazines and books. Now, that's overwhelming, is it not?
Yeah, it is.
25 years it's been in my heart. And people are wondering, what are you doing with your life? Well, I've been collecting. I have my own library of 12,000 books on personal development, spiritual growth. But now if I can marry my father's library, and I've never lost sight of my roots, this is precious to me. This is my history. And if this is the last thing I ever do with my life, it's something I want to leave as a gift. These interviews, everything, it's part of my gifting. That's an incredible story, 20 minutes to read.
Yeah, I would like to read this one.
Okay, I'll get you a copy of that.
Yeah.
And your story, there's stories in here, and when you read this, it is absolutely incredible.
I would love to read that.
You were married, in Canada.
We're married in Toronto.
You were married in Toronto.
Yeah,
Yes.
in Canada.
Now I did see
And
on.
I didn't even know Kutcher
At
in
that
Germany
time.
because we immigrated before he was the believer. He was a Catholic. His background was Catholic.
Yes, and I hear number 8. See, Walter Kutcher was member number 8.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the history as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, they came to Toronto, and at the time when the church was started organizing. Yeah.
So you first met him when he came to Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of more
That's
your
right.
how you started.
Yeah.
Now, I read that Brother Nishchik invited or brought Yokorovnik and your past husband there, and they came from Halifax to the Ukrainian Bible Institute, 1948.
Yes, they came. Yeah, I think he came in 1949.
Or a year later.
Yeah,
there.
a year later. We came in 1948. We were the first ones that emigrated from Germany. It was the first
immigration that was coming through.
That was coming. That was not sponsored by the church.
Yes.
Or by any family. It was by the government.
By the government.
That's right.
Yeah. On page 25, you will see here the good-looking men that all came from the Ukrainian Bible Institute.
Yeah.
And there's your Walter Kutcher passed out in the back in the center.
Yeah.
Brother Osypowich, Brother Prokofyak, all these bachelors.
Yeah. Leonid
Kutcher,
Korovnik.
and Brother Revko, Mr. Korovnik's either got to be this one or that one. I can't make out the other person.
Leonid Korovnik.
I think his name is in there. And he's got to be one of them.
No, that was Neshchik's Victor.
Nishik's son.
Neshchik's son.
Okay.
Я так думаю.
So I don't know who that person is and that person is, but this is standing in front of me. That's Revko. Osypowich, Prokofyak, Kutcher, Kachuk, Ivan.
Ivan.
Revko, and don't know who these are.
Знаєш, хто це є? Я не маю тих своїх окулярів, мої окуляри в ауті.
These are all these young bachelors in front of a bus coming east to Toronto. And when I read that, you know, John, they all came to Toronto, and so you met him for the first time in the Toronto church. And then you got married just a couple of years after that?
After that, yes,
you remember?
1951.
So like the next year?
Yeah, no, 2 years after.
Sorry, when he came to Toronto, the church started in 1950, and the year after there.
Yeah.
And I was reading through all there, the whole history of how Walter was one of the youth presidents, and Rich was one of all these. Your husband was in charge of the youth at that time too. So, and I was in charge of the youth, and I'm looking at Nick Rich. Why is God taking all these youth presidents young? Did I take on a role maybe that I'm going to go young too?
No, don't think about that.
And I did. And I've been living my life for 20 years saying, you know what, our life is so short, we don't know. But when I looked at all that, all these youth presidents of the Toronto church, God was taking them. And at our church in Barrie, the Emmanuel Baptist Church, the past 2 chairmen of the board have died suddenly. And it's like, don't take on that position because you don't know. Is there? It's humorous, but you don't know why that happens. So, can you share very quickly what do you recall of your parents' role in this? Now, the Toronto Church, your parents are original members. You're original member. And what do you remember your mother and father doing at that time in the church?
What they were doing everything, whatever was possible. They gave heart and soul to the church. There was nothing else for them but the church.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
I knew that. There's a story here, but I want to hear it from what do the children remember?
And also, Dad wanted to help almost everybody, whoever was coming to Canada after us. He was the first one that bought the house, and he said, if I have room, I'm going to have everybody over here just to give them the start. And I was the one that had a little bit of knowledge of English a little bit later on, so I helped people to go and find jobs.
Do all the paperwork and the money and the jobs and applications.
Yeah.
So you were a big pivotal part.
I was.
Wondering, why am I born into this family? Because now I have to do all this work. Were you not?
No, I wasn't thinking that. no, that was part of my
Was that
life.
a ministry
and that's
that-
a ministry, and that's the way we were living. That's the way it was our life.
Do you-
I still feel that way.
I think that's because that comes from your parents.
Yeah, yeah.
And
that's the way I was
It
brought
comes
up.
from
That's
your
the
parents
way
and you see the
that's
witness.
the way we lived. That's the way we existed, because to help others.
Can you teach that to someone, or is that something that special people have?
I don't know if you can teach that to someone. I don't think everybody will
Do it.
will do it.
It's a
Will be able
sacrifice. It's
to.
sacrificial.
Yeah.
I think it really requires the right heart. All I remember is your father always standing at the back.
Yes, always sitting at the back,
Quiet.
greeting people,
And
quiet.
see, I saw everyone in their older ages, older years, and all I remembered is being quiet, walking up to the front, doing what's spoken of the shadow, passing that
Yeah.
out. I know when we grew up, we all knew that Mr. Osypowich was the banker in the church.
Yeah, that
You
that
just
was
couldn't-
Eric.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's
No, your
yeah.
father was the
Oh,
banker.
yes, oh, he was.
He was lending all the money.
He didn't know how to do it on a
You just
paper,
said
but
that,
he
right?
had
So-
it in his
So,
head.
when you said almost every family
That's
that
right.
came,
That's right.
like, that is a history in itself, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know you know that too, but Mr.
He used to mortgage his own house,
To help
house
others?
in order to get finances for the church.
But let me ask you this, if it's not, sorry, not
Yeah.
personal. Where did your father get all this money from? How was he blessed? Was it
You know
some
what
investments, books, inheritance?
No, nothing like
I
that.
want, first
My
time,
dad, when we came to Canada, when we were on Major Street in an apartment for Polonenko, on the third floor. Now, he was very active. He started with the Ukrainian community, getting acquainted, and he got acquainted with the insurance agent. And he said that agent saw in that the possibilities and gift that he can make things do
financially or with money?
financially, yeah. He says, you know what, Paula? I'll lend you money.
Mm.
You buy a house. So don't rent. You buy a house. I won't charge you any interest.
Mm.
I'll lend you money. He lent him that money. We were not at home because when we came, we went to Virgil, to the farms to work.
Yes.
Alec and I and my mom. When we came back, Dad already had a house. And Mom said, oh my God, what are we going to, how are we going to pay for it? Who is going to pay for it? Mom has no job. We went to make a few dollars on the farms to be able to survive, because how much did Dad make? He came on a contract to a Jewish factory, and he was making $18 a week. They used to walk to work. Didn't pay 5 cents for a streetcar. They walked to save the money. And that's how we started.
So he bought that first house.
The
So
first house
all
on
that money
490 Brunswick.
Brunswick, and I know where Brunswick is, Bloor and Bathurst area.
Bloor and Bathurst area.
This is Saturday, August the 15th. Just looking for 490 Brunswick. I'm parked there, and as I drove by the house and took a picture, there's the 490 Brunswick Avenue where the Osypowiches lived, and many of our church members moved in here and had rooms. No one home today. I will try again another day. And as we look further up the road, we see DuPont down there. And as we pan around, wondering how many families actually lived in those rooms there today. Bye for now.
Did all that money come from that one house?
That's right.
So from buying that house
Yes,
or
and
from
selling it,
selling
and then
it?
buying another one and selling it, and then
So you make a little profit, then you have a little tied up?
profit. And then he also, besides working in a factory, he worked at home.
And what did he do at home?
Made suits.
He was a
Tailor.
tailor.
Yeah,
Remember,
because he was a tailor at home. He had a tailor shop,
right?
and he was teaching people how to make clothes.
Clothing. So people were coming to your home as well, and he's doing all this work.
That's right. And we had one couple in Montreal, Yakubchuks, and he was one of my dad's pupil at home, and we became real good friends.
Mm.
We used to go to Montreal to visit them. Then they moved to Vernon, and when Alec and Nora lived in British Columbia, they used to come. They went for their 25th wedding anniversary. We all went, and and they were Christians as well.
You got the story there. I was going to say, Virgil. I read Mr. Dumich's.
Yeah.
Pastored in Virgil. Lutzig's came to Virgil first. So
Yeah.
you're talking about Virgil on the farm. So
On the farms, yeah.
Virgil was more farmland and
That's right.
working on that there. Okay. Boy, the clock is past there, and
Wow. Past dinner time.
let me try to wrap. We didn't even get going, and let me try to wrap up there very quickly.
There are a lot of stories, yeah.
That's
It's amazing when you ask question how everything comes back.
yes, when we do that. I'm going to wrap up here. I'm just going to share one more thought because I know it's supper time. I would love to continue with you as we go on to the next thing, but I'm going to share this. Our boxes from Germany were sent to 97 Kenwood. So I know how much of ministry your parents
We even
did.
had your family.
I don't know if we stayed there for a night or a week.
Yeah.
You'll have to fill me in on that later. I found a letter in my dad's papers where your father signed that our family would not be any financial hardship in Canada, and how he had to get it notarized, and I just saw that. So thank you for that to your family as well. Your mother was my grade 2 Sunday school teacher, and she told me that started with the verses. And I've never forgotten going to her home out in Scarborough somewhere, and she gave us all the coloring books. Mine was David and Goliath. I do remember your younger brother David in his room, and he was doing some chemistry experiments, and I remember that. But I have my memories, and I just wanted to share those. But thank you for just sharing this part, and this was more about your parents and the start. And I wish I could go on for another 2 hours here, and I will somehow and sometime, but I need to stop here because of supper and tonight's service, and I would love to continue with you, and it might even happen a bit later after service, I don't know, but I'm not going to get this opportunity again, but thank you very much just for sharing this part, and a little bit of our history, and when we meet again, to just continue with your husbands and ministry and work there, and I know those were difficult times, and it's to encourage. There's a lot of people that will watch this, and I'll share a lot of people. God took a lot of men at young ages, and a lot of people are hurting out there, and it's been years ago, but there are people today that are losing their husbands and their wives.
I know.
And you can be a comfort to them because it's not something we prepared for, but we really need God and the Holy Spirit help to get us through those days.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you for that time.
Okay.
And as we end off here, the red light's still on, so I got all this. And let me just pray quickly as we go on to the food here. Dear God, thank you for this time, even so short, to just start with a little journey of interviewing RIA and Nora, and the Osypowich family, and especially their parents' instrumental work in the Toronto church, and everyone they helped out, including our family. This is such a big part of our history. May you continue to bless their family and their children and their grandchildren, and for generations to come. And may they be blessed because of their parents' service in the church, and to you we pray this in your name. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.